So the disclaimer I have is that I hate Mycoplasma hypopneumoniae more than I hate PRRS virus. And that's because it can go undetected for a long period of time, especially if you're a stable herd or you believe to be stable. Once you figure out that you are unstable, it feels like it takes forever to get you back to square one. It kills late finishing pigs, so you have all your time and money and energy invested into these animals, and then they tend to die at 300 pounds. And you have a producer looking at you saying, "Doc, you're gonna help me? My pigs are dying." And it's kind of like the horse is already out of the barn. You already have an unstable farm, and by the time that you realize it, it's really hard to treat those pigs out of it. So I have a very big disdain for Mycoplasma, more than I do PRRS, and so I'm thankful to be able to sit here and talk with you guys today. And so I do believe it's one of the most significant pathogens that affects pigs. And when you combine it with PRRS and flu, it's disaster. If you're lucky enough to be kind of an uncomplicated, stable Mycoplasma, life can be okay. But if you get PRRS and flu on top of that, it's one of the worst things that I've ever seen. And so another reason why I have a very big disdain for Mycoplasma. If you're uncomplicated, like I said, and a stable farm, you'll still see a decrease in performance. And so you might not be able to visually see the pigs getting sick. You might hear a little bit of a cough, but you do have a decrease in performance, whether you can see it or not. And economically, it can add extreme amounts of mortality to your wean to finish. As little as 2%, but it can go as high as 10%, especially when you're combining it with PRRS and flu. And so we estimated, when we look at our client base, when you combine in the average daily gain, the feed efficiency, the mortality, it's about $3.61 per head, and that's probably pretty conservative. If you add PRRS on top of that, it can be worse. And one thing that I didn't realize until I started eradicating Mycoplasma from sow farms is how much money goes into trying to treat these pigs, and a lot of the times it feels unsuccessful, that treatment. So we've seen as high as 60 cents per head marketed in medication costs. So basically you have two options, to be or not to be. You can be positive, stable, and you can live with it, or you can be negative. And the only reason that I would be Mycoplasma stable farm, there's only a few criteria. If you're an unfiltered sow farm in a very pig dense area and your chance of breakback is high, we tend to continue to help these producers be Mycoplasma stable. Another reason might be if you're farrow to finish all in one site, it can be really difficult to eradicate Mycoplasma, and so we will tend to help them stabilize that farm. You can have okay production from a Mycoplasma positive farm. I do have some non-negotiables when it comes to that. So PRRS negative wean to finish, if you're going to be PRRS negative, you can get by with being Mycoplasma stable or Mycoplasma positive. If you're going to do that, you have to have good early gilt acclimation. And so getting that gilt infected by around 84 days of age so that they have time to decrease shedding and stop shedding by the time they actually have a litter. And a good vaccination program, typically like to have a couple doses of Mycoplasma vaccine into them as a growing animal. And so again, just getting that early acclimation so that by the time they farrow, you're weaning a mostly negative pig. So in my opinion, and there's probably somebody in the third row that would have the same opinion, Mycoplasma hypopneumoniae negative status is the desirable status. Life is just better without Mycoplasma. And that is why within our client base, we took a poll kind of our top 16 sow clients, and 80% of those farms are Mycoplasma negative. It's the same reason why we've eradicated Mycoplasma from close to 200,000 sows. There are a few exceptions with the continuous flow and a really pig dense area and non-filtered. We may run them positive, but in general, life is much better Mycoplasma negative. And so in order to get Mycoplasma negative, there's an eradication process that we do that involves exposing all the animals to Mycoplasma, closing them down for an 8-month period, and most times at the end of it, doing a medication phase. So like I said, we've eradicated Mycoplasma from close to 200,000 sows. These producers typically see a bump in average daily gain, certainly a decrease in mortality, decreased medication costs, but overall it's an easier pig to raise. My whole goal most times is just to get a pig out there that producers enjoy raising and growing up, and there's some secondary benefits to having Mycoplasma negative. It just feels like pigs just do better and the producers feel like they're an easier pig to raise. So once we have a negative sow farm, we want to make sure that we keep them negative, because a negative herd, when they break with Mycoplasma, is a significant event, and so we really want to make sure that we're keeping that status negative. The most likely route of introduction into these sow farms is going to either be through aerosol. So although it's a less frequent event, it's not as common as what PRRS is, but it's still, we believe there still can be some transmission through the air for Mycoplasma into these sow farms. But our risk that we have every week, every month, is usually gilt introductions, and so we really want to make sure that we have a negative gilt coming into these herds. Filtration has been really great with keeping out Mycoplasma hyop, so not everybody has that option of filtering, but it has been successful. And so we focus on really preventing it through the gilt introduction. So it comes down to the right test at the right time and trying to get the right number of samples. I'm hoping that Alyssa doesn't come up after me and tell me that I need to sample 200 gilts every time they come in. You're not going to do that to me, right? Okay, good. So right test, right time, right number. And so a common testing scheme for Swine Vet Center and our clients would be either if they're entering them as a feeder pig, so if they come in around that 50 pounds, we'll isolate them for 3 weeks, and we'll do 30 laryngeal swabs, and we'll pool those into 3. So we'll get 10 Mycoplasma PCR test results, and we don't typically, it's more client preference, we don't typically test them out of the nursery to get to the on-site GDU for a couple reasons. One, the smaller they get, it's a lot harder to get that laryngeal swab. It's not impossible, but you need a smaller speculum and a smaller spoon, and just the odds of them getting infected in that short period of time in the nursery is not that high. So if you're a multiplication farm, you might want to consider testing them out of the nursery. For most of our clients, we test them once they get to the on-site isolation as a feeder pig. We wait the 3 weeks to give them time if they did get infected in late nursery or on truck. Gives it time for the Mycoplasma to spread, and we'll do 30 samples for laryngeal swabs. If we have a client that is bringing in selects, we'll do the same testing. We'll do the laryngeal swabs, but prior to entry into the farm, we'll do 30 laryngeal swabs, pools, Mycoplasma PCR, pools of 3. And then once they get to the on-site isolation, wait the 3 weeks and do the testing again. So they'll get tested twice before they're actually brought into the farm if they're brought in as selects. And we like to get that testing done within a week of shipment. So we have a 7-day rule. If they're going to get on a truck, they have to be tested within 7 days of movement. So if you were wine 2-3 years ago, we were relying all of our Mycoplasma hopes and dreams on serology, and it was typically 4 to 6 weeks behind infection. So if you got lucky enough or unlucky enough to get infected 3 weeks before they came to the sow farm, you might find it. But when looking at what we're trying to do now with serology, if it's 4 to 6 weeks behind, we will not be able to pick up those acute breaks. And so it doesn't fit into my 3-week isolation period, so therefore we do not use serology when deciding if we're entering in gilts into a herd. We've also tried doing the rope testing, so saliva from the rope test. Very low sensitivity, and we're likely to miss those breaks. And so Alyssa's going to probably talk a little bit more about that. But again, I can't find that mycoplasma in that 3-week window that I need to find it in, and so ropes are not a viable option as well. So it really comes down to, the laryngeal swabs, and Dr. Alyssa is going to talk a little bit about the tracheal samples. These two samples are way more sensitive to acute infections, which is what I need to find most times. And so we have chosen the laryngeal swab on most of our herds just because it's something that's easy to train people on how to do and relatively simple. Monitoring mycoplasma negative sow farms, there's not a lot of ongoing monitoring that our clients have done. Really, it's kind of more responsive. So if there's a cough on a sow farm, I will typically, test for flu, but I'm always testing for mycoplasma. If they look at me wrong, if they give me one cough, they're getting a laryngeal swab for sure. So we're have heightened sensitivity to coughs on sow farms. We want to make sure that we didn't get a new introduction in. We will also do serology on those sow farms, just in case that it's an infection that's been there for a while and we did not catch. It's another added layer. If it's positive, we'll know that it's been there for 4 to 6 weeks. We'll also do some testing if we have an unexpected cough in the nursery. It's less frequent, but if we do see that, we will do some testing, test for flu and mycoplasma. And similar to the sow farm and grow finish, if we have a cough that starts kind of mid-finishing, we'll do ropes for flu, and if the flu is negative, then we'll move to the laryngeal swabs and make sure that we don't have some instability on a sow farm that we don't know about. So in summary, it really comes down to the right test, the right time, and the right sample. And so I guess if you learn nothing else from this talk, learn that myco-negative status is achievable, and it's extremely worth it. It's economical because of the economic losses from average daily gain, feed efficiency, and mortality. And I really want people to understand that serology I do not think is a viable option for finding acute infections, and so the laryngeal swabs and the tracheal swabs have been pretty easy to train crews on how to do, and so I believe that's the right way to test for incoming gilts into your farm. And again, myco-negative status is worth it. So if you have any questions, I will take them. Otherwise, we'll turn it over to Alyssa.
Thank you, Dr. Bruner. Do we have questions from the audience? I believe we have microphones around, so if you guys have any questions. I do have one, okay. Or two. Yes. So with the protocol that you've been using, how frequently do you get suspect results or false positives, or I don't know, is it something that you see very often, and when you have that type of case, how do you troubleshoot that?
Okay, good. Thank you for reminding me. I inadvertently sent her the wrong PowerPoint, so that was in my other PowerPoint. So we haven't been doing the laryngeal swabs for that long, probably a couple years. So up to this point, I think I've only had one suspect case that has come up. I have not had any false positives on the myco-PCR using the laryngeal swabs. The one suspect case that we did have, we essentially waited 7 to 10 days. We went back in and we doubled our sample number, so we did 60, and we did 60 laryngeal swabs, pools of 3, and we at that time considered the tracheal in case it was more sensitive, but due to time constraints, we ended up doing the 60 laryngeal swabs. So basically, we go back in and we test a larger number of animals and hoping that the time has given that mycoplasma time to spread around so that we can pick it up.
Thank you, Mark Hammer. Enjoyed your talk. When you do the testing and you find positives where you don't expect them, what recourse do you have, or what do you do with that information to help the producer mitigate the outbreak?
So every situation might be different. You know, if they're entering gilts in every 2 months, every month, you still have the opportunity to actually get those gilts out. And so if it's something that they're entering every week, what's the odds that it's already in the herd potentially? But if I were to find a mycoplasma positive sample in isolation on a sow farm, I would get those gilts out immediately. Because I think that aerosol transmission is a less frequent event, so I feel like you actually have a chance to be able to get it out of the isolation before it gets into the farm.
Okay, so most of your testing then is on incoming gilts to assure their status is negative?
Yes.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Yep.
Hi, thank you for your talk. I would like to know your thoughts about the pooling. I don't know, because you you sample 30 animals, that's to detect a 10% of prevalence. Mm-hmm. And I'm thinking, so the pooling, we know that decreased the sensitivity, right, when we want to detect a pathogen. I don't know, I would like to know your thoughts about, because we are testing negative farms. Do we want to pool? Do we want to decrease our sensitivity?
And so, and again, I love that answer. It depends, but it depends on the client. You have to manage the cost and the feasibility of getting it done. Most of these sow farms are used to testing 30 animals, and then the cost of running all 30 samples individually, it can get pretty spendy. And so, I agree with you. We're decreasing our sensitivity. We're hoping that the time that we give them, so the 3 weeks on site, gives the time for the mycoplasma to spread around so that we actually could find it if there was an infection. And it really depends on how sure you want to be that mycoplasma is not there. If you're a multiplication farm, it probably makes more sense to do individual. Mm-hmm. On a commercial farm, especially some of our larger clients that are doing a lot of testing, those dollars really add up. And the possibility of the risk is probably relatively low. And so we just kind of try and manage all that together.
Okay, thank you.